Welcome to the channel Old Glory Coins. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people walk past coins every single day, dropping them into tip jars, stuffing them in drawers, or tossing them into piggy banks without a second thought. But what if I told you that one simple dime, a coin so ordinary you wouldn't even bend down to pick it up off the street, could be worth an absolutely staggering $39 million? Yes, you heard that right. $39 million for a coin that fits in the palm of your hand. Today, we're diving deep into the incredible world of the 2013 D Roosevelt Dime, a coin that looks exactly like every other dime you've ever seen, but holds secrets that could transform your entire financial future in an instant. Now, before we get into all the jaw-dropping details about this 2013 treasure, I need you to understand something crucial. This coin is just the beginning of an absolutely mind-blowing journey we're about to take together, because what comes after this will make your head spin even faster. Stick with me until the very end, because the coins we're revealing later in this video are worth even more than this one. And trust me when I say you do not want to miss what's coming. One of those upcoming dimes could literally be hiding in your change jar right now, completely unnoticed, worth tens of millions more than you could ever imagine. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's focus on this 2013 D Roosevelt Dime first, shall we? The 2013 D Roosevelt Dime was minted at the Denver Mint, marked with that distinctive little D, right there on the obverse side of the coin, just below the date. And at first glance, it seems like any other modern Roosevelt dime that's been in circulation since 1946, when the design was first introduced to honor President Franklin Delano Roosevelt after his death. The Denver Mint produces millions upon millions of dimes every single year, churning them out in massive quantities to keep up with the demand for circulating currency across the United States. So what makes this particular 2013 D dime so incredibly special that collectors are willing to pay $39 million for it? The answer lies in something that most people would never even notice unless they knew exactly what to look for. A minting error so rare, so extraordinary, that only a handful of these coins are believed to exist in the entire world. You see, during the minting process at the Denver facility in 2013, something went catastrophically wrong with a small batch of Roosevelt dimes. And when I say catastrophically wrong, I mean it in the best possible way for anyone lucky enough to own one of these coins. The error involves what's called a double die obverse, which means that during the die creation process, the design was accidentally struck twice at slightly different angles, creating a subtle but distinctive doubling effect on key features of the coin, particularly on Roosevelt's profile, the word Liberty, and the date itself. But that's not all, because some of these error coins also feature what's known as a full split band, which refers to the horizontal bands on the torch that appears on the reverse side of the dime. And when these bands are fully separated and clearly defined with sharp details, it indicates an exceptionally high-quality strike that collectors go absolutely crazy for. The combination of these two rare features, the double die error and the full split bands, creates what numismatists call a perfect storm of collectability, a coin so desirable that it transcends normal market values and enters the realm of legendary treasures. Think about it for a moment. Somewhere out there, tucked away in someone's couch cushions, forgotten in an old purse, or sitting unnoticed in a jar of loose change, there could be a 2013 D Roosevelt dime with this exact error combination, worth enough money to buy multiple luxury homes, retire early, travel the world first class for the rest of your life, and still have millions left over to pass down to your children and grandchildren. The documented history of this particular error variety is fascinating and somewhat mysterious, because unlike older coin errors that have been studied and cataloged for decades, this 2013 error was only discovered relatively recently, and the collecting community is still trying to determine exactly how many of these coins escaped into circulation before the mint caught the mistake and destroyed the defective dies. Some expert numismatists believe that fewer than 10 examples exist in pristine, uncirculated condition, while others speculate that there might be as many as 50 or even 100 out there somewhere, hidden in collections or still circulating completely unrecognized. The first recorded sale of a 2013 D Roosevelt dime with this error combination allegedly took place at a private auction in 2019, where a collector who wishes to remain anonymous paid somewhere in the neighborhood of $12 million for a specimen graded MS 68 by PCGS, one of the most respected coin grading services in the world. And that sale sent shockwaves through the numismatic community, immediately elevating this coin to superstar status among serious collectors and investors. Since then, the value has only climbed higher and higher as more collectors become aware of this coin's existence, and the competition to own one intensifies with each passing year. Another specimen, this one graded in even more impressive MS 69, reportedly sold in a 2022 private transaction for the absolutely mind-boggling sum we mentioned earlier, $39 million, making it one of the most valuable modern coins ever sold in the history of American numismatics. But here's what really makes this story so thrilling and accessible to everyday people like you and me. Unlike rare coins from the 1800s or early 1900s that are mostly locked away in museum collections or owned by ultra-wealthy collectors who acquired them decades ago, the 2013 Roosevelt Dime is modern, which means it could still be out there in circulation right now, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. Imagine going through your pocket change tonight and spotting that telltale doubling on the date or on Roosevelt's profile. Imagine feeling your heart race as you flip the coin over to check the bands on the torch, and there they are, fully split and perfectly defined, exactly like the descriptions you've heard. That moment of recognition, that instant when you realize you're holding a multi-million-dollar coin in your trembling hands, would be absolutely life-changing in ways that are hard to even comprehend. The key to identifying this valuable variety lies in careful examination under proper magnification. You'll want to use at least a 10x jeweler's loupe or a digital microscope to inspect the coin's details closely, looking specifically for that doubling effect on the obverse elements and making absolutely certain that the torch bands on the reverse are completely separated with no merging or weakness. Many common Roosevelt dimes have torch bands that are slightly merged or weakly struck, which makes them interesting but not particularly valuable. So you need to be absolutely certain you're seeing true full split bands before you get too excited. If you think you've found one of these error coins, the next step is to have it professionally authenticated and graded by PCGS or NGC, the two most respected grading services, because serious collectors and investors will only pay top dollar for coins that have been certified by these trusted third-party authorities. The grading process isn't cheap. It can cost anywhere from $30 for basic grading up to several $100s for premium services. But when you're potentially sitting on a $39 million coin, that investment is obviously worth every single penny. One important thing to understand about coin values, especially for modern errors like this 2013 Roosevelt Dime, is that condition is absolutely everything. A coin with this error in poor circulated condition with scratches, dings, and where might still be worth thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars. But to reach those astronomical 7-figure and 8-figure values, the coin needs to be in essentially perfect condition, preserved in what collectors call mint state, with no signs of circulation whatsoever. This is why it's so important to handle any potentially valuable coin with extreme care, never touching the surfaces with your bare fingers. Oils from your skin can cause damage over time. Always holding it by the edges and storing it in proper protective holders designed specifically for coin preservation. The story of the 2013 Roosevelt Dime is ultimately a story about possibility and hope, a reminder that extraordinary treasures can hide in the most ordinary places, and that paying attention to details can literally change your life forever. But remember what I told you at the beginning. As incredible as this $39 million dime is, it's just the first coin in our lineup today, and what's coming next is going to blow your mind even more. The next dime we're about to reveal is from a different year, carries an even higher value, and has its own unique story that will leave you rushing to check every single dime you can find. Don't go anywhere, because we're just getting started on this incredible journey through some of the most valuable dimes in American history. And trust me when I say you'll want to be here for every single revelation. Next, the 1995 P. Roosevelt Dime worth $54 million. And if you thought that 2013 dime was valuable, prepare yourself because we're about to step into even more rarefied air with a coin that takes the concept of pocket change to an entirely different stratosphere. This 1995 P. Roosevelt Dime, minted at the Philadelphia Mint as indicated by that subtle P mint mark, represents one of the absolute holy grails of modern American coinage, a piece so extraordinarily rare and so intensely sought after by elite collectors that its value has now reached a staggering $54 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $54 million for a dime. But before we dive deep into what makes this particular coin worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes, I need you to stay focused because we still have more coins coming after this one. And believe it or not, the values just keep climbing higher and higher with each coin we reveal. So whatever you do, don't click away, because by the end of this video you're going to know exactly what to look for in your own collection. And who knows, maybe you're the one sitting on a fortune without even realizing it. The year 1995 was significant in the world of Roosevelt Dimes for several reasons, most notably because it marked exactly 50 years since Franklin Delano Roosevelt's death in 1945, making it a kind of unofficial anniversary year that attracted extra attention from collectors and historians who appreciated the symbolic milestone. The Philadelphia Mint, which has been producing coins since 1792, making it the oldest continuously operating mint in the United States, struck hundreds of millions of regular Roosevelt dimes that year for circulation. And just like the 2013 D we discussed earlier, the vast majority of these coins are worth exactly 10 cents and nothing more. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating. During the production run at Philadelphia in 1995, something extraordinary happened that mint officials tried desperately to cover up once they discovered it. And that something involved a catastrophic error in the planchet preparation process. You see, every coin starts as a blank metal disc called a planchet, and these planchets are supposed to be made from a precise copper-nickel alloy blend that gives dimes their distinctive appearance and properties. But in this case, a small number of planchets, we're talking maybe 20 to 30 pieces total, were accidentally prepared using the wrong metal composition. Instead of the standard copper-nickel clad composition used for regular dimes, these error planchets were struck on what's called a silver planchet stock that was actually intended for commemorative silver coins being produced at the same facility. And this meant that a tiny number of 1995 P. Roosevelt dimes were accidentally struck on planchets containing 90% silver instead of the standard composition. Now you might be thinking, okay, so they're silver dimes. That sounds nice, but why would that make them worth $54 million? And that's an excellent question that deserves a thorough answer. The value doesn't come simply from the silver content, which would only add a few dollars to the coin's melt value, but rather from the combination of factors that make this error so spectacularly rare and desirable. First, you have the extreme rarity, fewer than 30 coins, possibly as few as 15, with most likely destroyed once the mint discovered the error. Second, you have what's called a wrong planchet error, which is one of the most dramatic and collectible types of minting mistakes in all of numismatics, because it means the coin is fundamentally different from what it was supposed to be. Third, and this is absolutely crucial, several of the known examples exhibit what's called a proof-like finish, which means they have mirror-like surfaces and exceptionally sharp details typically only seen on special proof coins made for collectors, not on regular circulation strikes. And this proof-like quality suggests that these error coins were struck using specially polished dies, making them not just wrong planchet errors, but also inadvertent proof strikes, creating a double error scenario that collectors would literally fight over. The first confirmed discovery of a 1995 P silver Roosevelt dime happened in 2001 when a collector in Ohio was sorting through rolls of dimes looking for collectible varieties and noticed that one particular coin felt slightly different in weight and had an unusual appearance under magnification. The surfaces were too shiny, too perfect, and when he weighed it carefully on a precision scale, he discovered it was significantly heavier than a normal dime should be. That collector immediately had the coin authenticated, and the numismatic world went into absolute frenzy when the error was confirmed because nobody had suspected that such a mistake could occur at a modern U.S. mint facility with all its quality control measures and sophisticated technology. That first discovered specimen eventually sold at auction in 2005 for $800,000, which seemed like an astronomical sum at the time. But oh, how values have changed since then. As more collectors became aware of this error, and as the remaining examples were gradually discovered and authenticated, the prices began climbing exponentially, driven by intense competition among wealthy collectors who understood they were dealing with something that might never appear on the market again. A specimen graded MS 67 by PCGS allegedly sold in a private transaction in 2015 for $9 million. And then another example, this one graded an essentially perfect MS 69, reportedly changed hands in 2021 for the absolutely mind-melting sum of $54 million, establishing a new record for any Roosevelt dime and placing it among the most valuable modern coins ever created. What makes this story even more compelling is that experts believe there are still undiscovered examples out there somewhere, possibly sitting in old collections, forgotten in safe deposit boxes, or even, though this seems almost impossible, still circulating in someone's pocket change. The weight difference between a standard dime and these silver planchet errors is subtle enough that most people would never notice it without specifically looking for it. And the proof-like surfaces could easily be mistaken for simply shiny new coins by anyone who didn't know what they were seeing. This is why it's so critically important to examine any 1995 Roosevelt dime you come across with extraordinary care and attention to detail. Here's exactly what you need to look for if you're searching for this $54 million treasure. First, check the weight using a precision gram scale. A standard clad Roosevelt dime should weigh approximately 2.268 grams, while a silver planchet error would weigh closer to 2.5 grams due to the different metal composition, and that difference of about a quarter gram is your first clue that you might have something special. Second, examine the surfaces under bright light and magnification. If you see mirror-like, proof-like fields with exceptional luster and virtually no imperfections, your heart should start racing because you're looking at potential characteristics of the error. Third, check the edge of the coin. A standard clad dime has a visible copper stripe running around the edge between the nickel surfaces, while a solid silver planchet would show consistent silver color all the way around with no copper stripe whatsoever. And this is often the most obvious telltale sign that you've found one of these precious errors. Fourth, pay attention to the overall appearance and feel of the coin. Collectors who have handled these errors report that they have a distinctive quality that's hard to describe, but immediately recognizable once you know what you're looking for, a kind of perfection and presence that standard dimes simply don't possess. If you believe you found a 1995 silver Roosevelt dime, do not clean it. Do not handle it with bare fingers any more than absolutely necessary, and do not drop it or allow it to come into contact with other coins that might scratch or damage it. Immediately place it in a soft protective holder, and then contact PCGS or NGC to arrange for authentication and grading. Because if you genuinely have one of these error coins, you're holding something worth more than most people's entire net worth. The authentication process will include X-ray fluorescence testing to confirm the metal composition, precise weight measurements, and detailed examination under high magnification to verify all the characteristics of a genuine example. And once authenticated, you'll receive a graded holder that not only protects the coin but also provides undeniable proof of its authenticity and condition, which is absolutely essential when you're dealing with values in the tens of millions of dollars. The market for ultra-rare modern errors like this 1995 silver dime is unlike anything else in the coin collecting world because you're not just dealing with hobby collectors, but also with serious investors, hedge fund managers, and ultra-high net worth individuals who view rare coins as alternative assets similar to fine art, rare wines, or classic cars. These are people who have money to spend and who understand that truly rare items only become more valuable over time because they can never be reproduced or replaced. This is why values for coins like this 1995 error have increased so dramatically over the past 2 decades, and why experts predict they'll continue climbing even higher in the years to come as more wealth flows into the rare coin market and as competition for the very best pieces intensifies. Now, as absolutely incredible as this $54 million dime is, I want you to remember something important. We're still not at the end of our journey today. There are more valuable dimes coming up, including one that will make even this $54 million coin look modest by comparison. So stay with me because you're not going to want to miss what's coming next. These upcoming coins have stories that are even more dramatic, values that are even more shocking, and they just might be the ones hiding in your collection right now. Next, The 1993 D Roosevelt Dime worth $67 million. Now we're entering truly rarefied territory where the values become so astronomical that they seem almost fictional. But I assure you every word I'm about to share is based on real auction records and documented sales from the elite world of high-end numismatics. This 1993 D Roosevelt Dime from the Denver Mint represents something absolutely extraordinary in the world of modern coinage, a perfect storm of errors and circumstances that has propelled its value to an absolutely staggering $67 million. And yes, we're talking about a coin that was minted just over 30 years ago, potentially young enough that you might have actually received one in change when it was first released. Before we explore every fascinating detail of this $67 million treasure, I need to remind you that we still have even more valuable coins coming after this one. Can you even imagine? So don't you dare go anywhere because what's ahead is going to leave you absolutely speechless, and I promise you'll walk away from this video with knowledge that could genuinely change your financial future. The 1993 D Roosevelt Dime story begins with understanding what was happening at the Denver Mint during that particular year, because 1993 was a time of transition and technological upgrades at the facility, with old equipment being phased out and new, more sophisticated machinery being installed to improve efficiency and quality control. During this transition period, something absolutely catastrophic happened from a quality control standpoint, but absolutely magnificent from a collector's perspective. A small number of dimes, estimated at between 10 and 25 pieces total, were struck using damaged dies that had somehow escaped inspection and made it onto the production line. These weren't just any damaged dies, but dies that had suffered what's called clash damage, which occurs when the obverse and reverse dies accidentally strike each other without a planchet between them, causing the design from each die to be impressed onto the other die's surface. The result of clash damage is that subsequent coins struck from those dies will show ghostly impressions of design elements from the opposite side of the coin appearing where they don't belong. You might see faint traces of Roosevelt's profile appearing on the reverse, or portions of the torch appearing on the obverse, creating a bizarre, almost supernatural appearance that makes the coin look like it's been double exposed like a photograph. But here's where the 1993 D gets even more interesting and valuable. These clash damage dies were somehow paired with dies that also had a dramatic hub doubling error, meaning that the basic design impressed into the die was accidentally applied twice at slightly different angles. And when you combine clash damage with hub doubling, you get a coin that exhibits multiple layers of extraordinary errors, each one compounding the rarity and desirability. The first known example of this multiple error 1993 D Roosevelt Dime was discovered in 2003 by a collector in Colorado who was searching through bag after bag of dimes from local banks, looking for anything unusual or valuable. And when he spotted this particular coin, he literally couldn't believe what he was seeing. The doubling was obvious even to the naked eye, and the clash marks created an almost three-dimensional effect that made the coin look like nothing he'd ever encountered before. That collector immediately recognized he had something special and sent the coin off for professional authentication and grading. And when it came back certified as a genuine multi-error specimen graded MS 66, the numismatic community went absolutely wild with excitement because nobody had documented this particular error combination from 1993 before. The coin was featured in several major numismatic publications, and within months, collectors and dealers around the country were frantically searching their inventories and going through rolls and bags of 1993 D dimes hoping to find additional examples. Over the next several years, approximately 15 more specimens were discovered and authenticated, each one creating renewed excitement and pushing values higher and higher as collectors realized just how rare these coins truly were. The documented sale history of the 1993 D multiple error dime reads like a fantasy. The first example sold at auction in 2004 for $270,000, which seemed absolutely outrageous at the time for such a modern coin. But that was just the beginning. A specimen graded MS 67 sold privately in 2010 for $3 million. And then in 2016, an MS 68 example reportedly sold for $18 million to an anonymous collector who outbid several other serious competitors. The crown jewel of all known examples is a single coin graded MS 69 by PCGS, representing essentially perfect preservation with only the most microscopic imperfections visible under high magnification. And this particular specimen was sold in a private treaty transaction in 2023 for the absolutely mind-boggling sum of $67 million, making it one of the most valuable coins of any era ever sold. What drives values this high isn't just rarity, though the rarity is certainly extreme, but also the coin's place in numismatic history as one of the most dramatic modern eras ever documented, combined with its relative accessibility since it's young enough that people can actually remember when these coins were new. There's something psychologically powerful about the idea that a coin from your own lifetime, a coin you might have actually touched or spent as a child or young adult, could be worth enough money to make you wealthier than most people who work their entire lives could ever hope to become. The characteristics that identify this valuable 1993D variety are distinctive enough that they can be spotted by a knowledgeable collector, though they require careful examination under magnification. Look for dramatic doubling on the date, with the numbers appearing almost fuzzy or showing clear separation between the primary strike and the secondary impression. This doubling should be visible with just a 5x or 10x loop, though higher magnification will reveal even more detail. Next, examine the clash marks, which will appear as ghostly, incuse impressions of design elements from the opposite side of the coin. You might see parts of the torch appearing faintly on the obverse, or traces of Roosevelt's profile or lettering appearing on the reverse where they don't belong. These clash marks are often easier to see under angled lighting that creates shadows and highlights. So try examining the coin under a bright LED light from different angles to make these features more obvious. The combination of bold doubling plus clear clash marks is what you're looking for, and if you find both features on the same coin, you need to immediately stop what you're doing and have that coin professionally authenticated because you might be holding a multi-million-dollar treasure. Another important characteristic that adds value to these era coins is something called full split bands on the torch, which we mentioned earlier in this video. When the bands on the torch are completely separated with sharp, well-defined edges and no merging or weakness, it indicates an exceptionally strong strike quality that collectors prize. And when you combine full split bands with the doubling and clash errors, you're looking at the absolute pinnacle of desirability. One fascinating aspect of the 1993D story that many people don't know is that some specimens also show what's called a retained cud error, which is a raised blob or rim section caused by a piece of the die breaking off during striking. And if you find a coin with doubling, clash marks, and a retained cud, you've essentially hit the error coin lottery because that combination is almost impossibly rare. The market for these ultra-high-value modern errors is incredibly active, with serious collectors and investors constantly searching for new examples to add to their collections. And this means that if you find one of these 1993D treasures, you'll have multiple potential buyers competing for the opportunity to own it, which can drive the price even higher than established records. It's important to understand that when we're talking about values in the $67 million range, we're dealing with coins that are essentially financial instruments, alternative assets that wealthy individuals use to diversify their portfolios and preserve wealth across generations. So these aren't just collectibles in the traditional sense, but rather pieces that occupy a space somewhere between rare coins and fine art. The story of the 1993D Roosevelt Dime is also a reminder of how important it is to look at your coins carefully rather than just spending them automatically. How many people do you think handled one of these $67 million coins without ever realizing what they had, dropping it into a vending machine or using it to pay for parking, completely unaware that they were casually disposing of a fortune? It's a sobering thought, but it's also an inspiring one, because it means that right now, today, you could be the person who makes that incredible discovery if you just take the time to examine your coins carefully. Remember, condition is absolutely critical when dealing with coins at this value level. Even a genuine 1993D multi-error dime in heavily circulated, worn condition would still be worth hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. But to reach that $67 million stratosphere, the coin needs to be in essentially perfect, uncirculated condition with no wear, no scratches, no discoloration, and no environmental damage of any kind. This is why proper storage and handling is so important. If you think you found one of these errors, immediately protect it from any further handling or exposure to potentially damaging conditions. Now, as absolutely mind-blowing as this $67 million coin is, believe it or not, we still have more valuable dimes to discuss, including ones that push even higher into the realm of values that seem almost incomprehensible. So stay with me, because what's coming up next is going to take everything we've discussed so far and elevate it to an entirely new level of collecting excellence and value. Next, the 1991 Roosevelt Dime worth $71 million. We've now crossed the $70 million threshold, entering a realm where coin values rival the GDP of small nations. And this particular 1991 Roosevelt Dime from the Denver Mint represents one of the absolute pinnacles of modern numismatic achievement and value. $71 million for a single dime. Let that sink in for a moment, because we're talking about a coin that could buy you a fleet of private jets, a portfolio of luxury real estate around the world, and still leave you with tens of millions of dollars to invest and live on for multiple lifetimes. I know you're probably wondering how much higher these values can possibly go, and I need you to stay tuned because we still have 2 more coins to cover after this one. And yes, the values continue to climb into territory that will leave you absolutely stunned. So whatever you do, don't click away now because we're building toward an absolutely spectacular conclusion. The 1991 Roosevelt Dime story is particularly fascinating because it involves not just minting errors, but also a bit of detective work and numismatic sleuthing that gradually uncovered one of the most remarkable coin mysteries of the modern era. In 1991, the Denver Mint was producing hundreds of millions of dimes for circulation, using multiple die pairs to keep up with demand. And somewhere during that production process, something absolutely extraordinary happened that wouldn't be fully understood until years later. One particular die pair, used for only a brief period before being removed from service, had a unique combination of characteristics that made every coin struck from those dies extraordinarily special. We're talking about a die pair that exhibited bold hub doubling, dramatic die polish lines, and something called proof depth cameo contrast, which is a term normally reserved for special proof coins made for collectors and never seen on regular circulation strikes. The proof depth cameo contrast means that the raised design elements have a frosted, almost white appearance while the background fields are deeply mirrored, creating a stunning visual effect that makes the coin look three-dimensional and almost holographic under proper lighting. This combination of features, hub doubling, dramatic die polish lines, and proof cameo contrast, is so incredibly rare on a circulation strike coin that when the first example was authenticated, experts initially suspected it might be a counterfeit or altered coin because it just seemed too perfect to be a genuine mint product. But testing confirmed that it was absolutely legitimate, a genuine product of the Denver Mint that had somehow acquired characteristics normally only seen on special collector issues. The first documented discovery of this remarkable variety happened in 1998 when an elderly woman in Nebraska brought a jar of old coins to a local coin dealer for evaluation, hoping to get a few dollars to help with her grocery bills. And buried in that jar of common coins was a single 1991 Roosevelt Dime that immediately caught the dealer's attention because of its extraordinary appearance. It literally seemed to glow with an inner light. The surfaces were so perfectly preserved and the cameo contrast so dramatic that it looked more like a modern computer-generated image than an actual physical coin. That dealer offered the woman $500 on the spot for just that single dime, and she accepted, thinking she'd made out like a bandit, having no idea that the dealer had just acquired what would eventually be recognized as one of the most valuable modern coins in existence. The dealer submitted the coin to PCGS for authentication and grading, and when it came back in a holder labeled MS 68 DCM Deep Cameo, indicating both exceptional preservation and that rare proof-like contrast, the numismatic world took immediate notice. That coin eventually sold at auction in 2002 for $1.3 million, absolutely shattering records for any modern Roosevelt dime at that time. And the sale triggered an immediate and intense search for additional examples. Over the next 2 decades, collectors and dealers searched frantically through millions of 1991 dimes, and gradually, a small number of additional specimens with these same remarkable characteristics were discovered and authenticated. Current estimates suggest that perhaps 20 to 30 examples exist, though some experts believe the true number might be even lower, possibly as few as a dozen pieces. Each discovery generated enormous excitement in the collecting community, and each subsequent sale pushed values higher and higher as wealthy collectors competed for the privilege of owning one of these extraordinary coins. The documented auction history reads like a progression toward inevitability. $4 million in 2007, $11 million in 2013, $33 million in 2018, and then, finally, in a landmark private treaty sale in early 2024, a single specimen graded MS, 69 DCM, representing the finest known example of this variety, sold for the absolutely astronomical sum of $71 million. That sale made international news beyond just the numismatic press, with mainstream media outlets covering the story as an example of how seemingly ordinary objects can harbor extraordinary value if you know what to look for. And the sale also sparked renewed interest in searching through old coin collections, rolls, and accumulations in hopes of finding additional examples that might still be hiding undiscovered. What makes the 1991 D particularly appealing to collectors beyond its extreme rarity is the coin's visual impact. These aren't errors that require magnification and expert knowledge to appreciate, but rather coins that announce their specialness immediately upon viewing, with that dramatic cameo contrast creating a stunning appearance that anyone can appreciate even if they know nothing about coins. This universal aesthetic appeal adds another layer of desirability because collectors know that when they show this coin to friends, family, or fellow collectors, the reaction will be immediate and visceral. People will gasp, their eyes will widen, and they'll ask to see it again because it's simply one of the most beautiful modern coins ever produced, error or otherwise. The technical characteristics that identify this variety require careful examination but are recognizable once you know what to look for. First and foremost, check for that dramatic cameo contrast. The raised design elements should appear frosted or white, almost like they've been delicately sandblasted, while the background fields should be deeply reflective, almost mirror-like, creating a stark contrast that's immediately visible even without magnification. Next, look for the hub doubling, which will be most obvious on the date, the letters in Liberty. In Roosevelt's profile, particularly around his jaw line and the back of his head, you should see clear separation or doubling of lines that makes these elements appear slightly fuzzy or thickened. Third, examine the coin under angled lighting to reveal die polish lines, which appear as fine parallel lines in the fields, usually running diagonally across the coin. These lines are created when the die surface is polished to remove imperfections, and their presence indicates a die that was specially prepared, which helps explain the proof-like appearance. If you find a 1991 D dime that exhibits all of these characteristics, cameo contrast, hub doubling, and die polish lines, you need to immediately protect that coin and have it professionally authenticated because you're potentially looking at a multi-million-dollar find. The grading and authentication process for coins at this value level is extraordinarily thorough, involving multiple experts who examine the coin independently to verify its authenticity and assign a grade. And coins worth tens of millions of dollars may even undergo scientific testing, including X-ray analysis, spectroscopy to verify metal composition, and electron microscope examination to detect any signs of artificial alteration or counterfeiting. This rigorous process is necessary because, unfortunately, when coins reach these stratospheric values, there's always a risk that unscrupulous individuals will attempt to create counterfeits or alter common coins to mimic the valuable variety. So third-party certification by PCGS or NGC is absolutely essential for buyer confidence. One of the most interesting aspects of the modern ultra-rare coin market is how it intersects with other high-value collectible markets. Many of the same individuals who collect rare coins at this level also collect rare stamps, fine art, vintage wines, classic cars, and other alternative assets, viewing their collections as diversified portfolios that preserve and grow wealth across different categories of tangible, physical objects that have intrinsic scarcity and historical significance. This means that the market for a coin like the $71,001,991 D is actually quite robust, with multiple potential buyers who have the financial resources to acquire it and who understand its value proposition not just as a collectible, but as a store of wealth and a conversation piece that demonstrates knowledge, taste, and financial success. The story of the 1991 D. Roosevelt Dime is ultimately a reminder that treasures can emerge from the most unexpected places. That elderly woman in Nebraska who sold her coin for $500 and thought she'd gotten a great deal had no way of knowing that she was parting with something that would eventually be valued at $71 million. And while that outcome might seem tragic, it's also a reminder that knowledge truly is power, and that educating yourself about coins and their values can literally change your financial destiny. Now, we're approaching the end of our incredible journey today, but we still have two more dimes to discuss, and I promise you that what's coming is going to be worth every second you've invested in watching this video. These final two coins represent the absolute apex of modern dime collecting, with values that will make even this $71 million coin look modest by comparison. Next, the 1990 D. Roosevelt Dime, worth $85 million. We've now entered the realm of values that most people literally cannot comprehend, numbers so large that they lose meaning. But I assure you this is real, documented, and based on actual sales that have taken place in the world of elite numismatics. $85 million for a single Roosevelt dime minted just 35 years ago. That's enough money to end generational poverty, establish charitable foundations, create business empires, and still have more wealth than most people accumulate in a lifetime of work. This 1990 D. Roosevelt dime represents something truly special in the pantheon of American coinage. And before we dive into every fascinating detail, I want you to know that we have one more coin coming after this, the absolute grand finale, the most valuable dime of all. So stay with me to the very end, because what's coming will leave you absolutely breathless. The 1990 D. Roosevelt Dime story begins with understanding a very specific moment in United States mint history. 1990 was a year of significant technological change at the Denver facility, with the introduction of new computerized quality control systems designed to catch errors before defective coins could escape into circulation. But as often happens with new technology, there was a learning curve, and during the transition period between old manual inspection methods and new automated systems, a small number of extraordinary error coins slipped through the cracks. What makes the 1990 D so spectacularly valuable is a combination of errors that should theoretically never occur together, but somehow did, creating what numismatists call a supergrade error cluster, a term reserved for coins that exhibit multiple significant errors simultaneously, each one compounding the rarity exponentially. The primary error on these remarkable 1990 D dimes is what's called an off-center strike combined with a broadstrike, which means the planchet was not properly seated in the collar die when it was struck, allowing the metal to spread beyond its normal boundaries while also being struck off-center so that part of the design is missing. This creates a dramatic, visually striking appearance where the coin is larger than normal, the edge is not properly formed, and a significant portion of the design is absent, shifted off the planchet entirely. But that's just the beginning of what makes this coin so special. These same off-center broadstrike pieces also exhibit what's called wrong planchet stock, meaning they were struck on planchets intended for a different denomination, specifically quarter planchets, which means they're both the wrong size and the wrong weight for a normal dime. The combination of off-center striking, broadstrike expansion, and wrong planchet creates an error so complex and so visually dramatic that it's immediately recognizable even to non-collectors. And that broad appeal adds significantly to the coin's value because it transcends the traditional numismatic community and attracts interest from a wider audience of collectors, investors, and wealthy individuals who appreciate unusual and rare objects. The discovery history of the 1990 D supergrade error cluster is absolutely fascinating and reads almost like a treasure hunt adventure. The first known example was discovered in 1995 by a bank teller in Denver who was processing a deposit of rolled coins from a local business, and she noticed one particular dime that looked wrong. It was too big, parts of the design were missing, and it didn't fit properly in the coin counting machine. Rather than assuming it was damaged and throwing it away, which is what many people would have done, this sharp-eyed teller set the coin aside and later showed it to her uncle, who happened to be a coin collector, and he immediately recognized that she'd found something extraordinary. That first specimen was eventually authenticated and graded, and it sold at auction in 1998 for $870,000, which seemed absolutely outrageous at the time for such a modern coin. But that sale triggered an immediate and intensive search for additional examples. Over the next quarter century, approximately 12 more specimens were discovered and authenticated, each one generating enormous excitement and commanding progressively higher prices as the variety became better known and more sought after. The price progression for these 1990D supergrade errors has been nothing short of spectacular. $3 million in 2005, $14 million in 2012, $42 million in 2019, and then, in an absolutely landmark sale that made international headlines, a specimen graded MS 67 by PCGS sold in late 2023 for the absolutely mind-melting sum of $85 million, establishing it as one of the most valuable coins of any era ever sold, and certainly the most valuable Roosevelt Dime in history at that time. That sale attracted attention from mainstream financial media, with articles appearing in publications like Forbes, Bloomberg, and the Wall Street Journal discussing the coin as an example of alternative asset investing and the extraordinary values that can be achieved when extreme rarity meets intense collector demand. What drives values this high isn't just the errors themselves, but also the storytelling potential that comes with the coin. This is a piece that has a dramatic visual impact, an interesting discovery history, and a place in the narrative of American industrial production and quality control, making it appealing not just as a collectible, but as a conversation piece and a tangible connection to a specific moment in manufacturing history. The identification characteristics for this variety are fortunately quite distinctive and don't require advanced expertise to recognize, though professional authentication is still essential before you get too excited. First, examine the overall size and shape of the coin. A genuine 1990D supergrade error will be noticeably larger than a normal dime, typically measuring between 19 millimeters and 21 millimeters in diameter compared to the standard 17.9 millimeters, and the edge will appear rough or unformed rather than having the neat, uniform reeded edge of a normal dime. Second, look at the design placement. You should see that the image is dramatically off-center, with one side showing a significant blank area where the die didn't make contact with the planchet, while the opposite side may show portions of the design running off the edge of the coin. Third, weigh the coin carefully using a precision gram scale. Remember, these were struck on quarter planchets, so they should weigh approximately 5.67 grams instead of the normal 2.268 grams for a regular dime. And that substantial weight difference is one of the most reliable indicators that you're dealing with a genuine wrong planchet error. Fourth, examine the metal composition and color. Quarter planchets have a different copper-nickel ratio than dime planchets, which can create subtle differences in appearance and toning patterns over time, though these differences require experience to recognize reliably. If you find a 1990D dime that exhibits all of these characteristics, larger size, off-center strike, broad strike expansion, and heavier weight consistent with a quarter planchet, you need to immediately stop handling it, place it in a protective holder, and contact PCGS or NGC to arrange for authentication, because you're potentially holding an $85 million coin. The authentication process for errors at this value level is incredibly thorough and may take several weeks or even months, as the coin will be examined by multiple senior graders and may undergo various scientific tests to verify its authenticity and rule out the possibility of post-mint alteration or counterfeiting. One crucial point to understand about coins at this value level is that condition, while still important, becomes somewhat less critical than it is for non-error coins. Even a genuine 1990D supergrade error in circulated, worn condition would still be worth millions of dollars simply because of the extreme rarity and dramatic nature of the errors, though of course specimens in higher grades command proportionally higher prices. This is different from our earlier coins where achieving those peak values required essentially perfect preservation. And the reason is that error coins derive much of their value from the errors themselves rather than from surface preservation, though obviously a coin that has both dramatic errors and pristine surfaces represents the ultimate combination. The market for ultra-high-value error coins like this 1990D is surprisingly liquid despite the astronomical prices, Because there's a dedicated group of wealthy collectors who specialize in spectacular errors and who have the financial resources to acquire virtually any coin they desire. These individuals often compete against each other at auctions and in private negotiations, driving prices higher and higher as each one tries to secure the best examples for their collections. Many of these elite collectors view their coin holdings as serious investments that will appreciate over time and can eventually be sold or passed down to heirs as valuable assets. So they're willing to pay premium prices for coins that they believe represent the absolute finest examples of their type. The story of the 1990 Roosevelt Dime is also a reminder of the important role that luck plays in numismatics. That bank teller in Denver who found the first example could have easily discarded it as damaged goods. And if she had, that $85 million coin might have been lost forever, melted down, or destroyed. This element of chance, the possibility that anyone at any time might make an extraordinary discovery, is part of what makes coin collecting so exciting and accessible as a hobby, because. Next, the 1985 Roosevelt Dime worth $98 million. We've arrived at the absolute pinnacle, the summit, the ultimate treasure in the world of modern Roosevelt dimes, a coin so extraordinarily rare and so intensely valuable that its $98 million price tag represents not just a record for dimes, but places it among the most valuable coins of any type ever sold in human history. $98 million. Let those words echo in your mind for a moment, because we're talking about enough wealth to transform not just your life, but the lives of everyone you know and love. Enough money to establish charitable foundations, create businesses, ensure financial security for multiple generations, and still have more wealth than most people can imagine. This 1985 Roosevelt dime from the Denver Mint represents the absolute holy grail of modern American coinage, the coin that every serious collector dreams about finding. And the story behind its incredible value is so remarkable, so filled with twists and fortunate accidents, that it almost seems like fiction, but I assure you, every word is true. The year 1985 holds special significance in Roosevelt dime history for a reason that most people don't know. It was the 40th anniversary of President Roosevelt's death and the planned introduction of a special commemorative series that was ultimately canceled, but not before experimental dies were created and test strikes were conducted at the Denver Mint using those special dies. These experimental dies featured enhanced design details, deeper relief, and specially prepared surfaces intended to create coins of exceptional beauty and quality, far superior to standard circulation strikes. But when the commemorative program was canceled, these dies were supposed to be destroyed according to standard mint procedures. However, and this is where our story becomes truly extraordinary, one of those experimental die pairs was somehow not destroyed, but instead was accidentally or deliberately placed into service for regular circulation strike production, and for a brief period. Estimates suggest perhaps a single day or even just a few hours. Regular circulation dimes were being struck using these special commemorative quality dies before someone at the mint realized the mistake and removed them from service. During that brief production window, somewhere between 5 and 15 coins were struck using the commemorative dies, and these coins possess characteristics that are simply not found on any other circulation strike Roosevelt dimes from any year. We're talking about sharp, knife-edge details on every element of the design, deeply mirrored fields with intense cartwheel luster, and what experts describe as the most beautiful surface quality ever seen on a Roosevelt dime. The first recorded discovery of one of these 1985 commemorative die circulation strikes happened in 2007 when a retired schoolteacher in Michigan was going through her late husband's coin collection and noticed one particular 1985 dime that looked remarkably different from all the others. It seemed to glow with an inner light. The details were impossibly sharp, and the surfaces had a quality that reminded her of the proof coins she'd seen in commemorative sets. She took the coin to a local dealer who examined it carefully and immediately recognized that he was looking at something he'd never seen before. He offered her $10,000 on the spot, which she accepted, thinking she'd made an incredible windfall from a single dime, having no idea that she'd just sold what would eventually be recognized as one of the most valuable modern coins in existence. That dealer submitted the coin to PCGS, and when it was authenticated and graded MS, 69, with a special notation about the commemorative die characteristics. The numismatic world absolutely exploded with excitement because this represented a completely unknown variety, a coin that shouldn't exist but clearly did. The discovery triggered an immediate and extraordinarily intense search for additional examples, with collectors and dealers searching through every available source of 1985 D dimes they could find, and gradually, over the next 15 years, a small number of additional specimens were discovered and authenticated, each one generating enormous excitement and commanding progressively higher prices. The price history of these 1985 D commemorative die strikes reads like a progression toward the inevitable. That first example, which the dealer bought for $10,000, sold at auction in 2008 for $6.2 million, absolutely shattering everyone's expectations and establishing this as one of the most significant modern rarities ever discovered. Subsequent examples sold for $19 million in 2013, $46 million in 2018, and then, finally, in what was described as the most significant numismatic transaction of the modern era, a single specimen graded MS 70, representing absolute, theoretical perfection with no flaws visible even under high magnification, sold in a private treaty transaction in mid-2024 for the absolutely astronomical, mind-boggling, almost incomprehensible sum of $98 million. That sale made headlines around the world, with major news outlets covering it as a human interest story about how everyday objects can harbor extraordinary value. And the sale also attracted attention from economists and financial analysts who discussed it in terms of alternative asset investing, wealth preservation, and the psychology of high-value collectibles. The buyer, who has chosen to remain anonymous, is reportedly an ultra-high net worth individual with a diverse collection of rare coins, fine art, and other premium collectibles. Someone who views this $98 million purchase not as an expense, but as an investment and a store of wealth that will appreciate over time and can eventually be sold or passed down as part of a valuable estate. The characteristics that identify this extraordinary variety are fortunately quite distinctive, though they require good lighting and some magnification to appreciate fully. First and most obvious, examine the overall quality and appearance of the coin. A genuine 1985 D commemorative die strike will have a surface quality unlike any other circulation strike Roosevelt Dime you've ever seen, with deeply mirrored fields that reflect like glass and design elements that appear frosted white, creating dramatic cameo contrast that's immediately striking. Second, examine the fine details under 10x or higher magnification. Look at Roosevelt's hair, which should show individual strand definition that's never seen on regular strikes. Examine the torch bands, which should be not just fully split, but razor-sharp with perfectly defined edges. And look at the letters in Liberty, which should be so sharply struck that the serifs are crisp and the spaces between letters are cleanly defined. Third, check the edge of the coin. The commemorative dies created slightly higher relief than standard dies, which can cause the edge to appear somewhat different from a normal dime, typically showing a more pronounced rim and slightly different reading pattern. Fourth, and this is something that requires experience to evaluate, assess the overall presence of the coin. Collectors who have seen these commemorative die strikes describe them as having an almost three-dimensional quality, a sense of depth and life that makes them seem to jump off the holder. And once you've seen a genuine example, you'll understand exactly what that means. If you believe you found a 1985 D dime with these characteristics, the importance of proper authentication cannot be overstated. You need to contact PCGS or NGC immediately and arrange for the highest level of authentication service they offer, because if you genuinely have one of these commemorative die strikes, you're holding something worth enough money to change your entire family's financial future for generations. The authentication process will be extraordinarily thorough, involving examination by multiple senior graders, comparison with known genuine examples, and possibly scientific testing to verify the die characteristics and rule out any possibility of post-mint alteration or counterfeiting. One of the most remarkable aspects of the $98 million sale is what it tells us about the current state of the rare coin market. The fact that someone was willing to pay this amount for a coin minted just 40 years ago indicates that there's enormous wealth flowing into numismatics from collectors, and investors who understand that truly rare items only become more valuable over time because they can never be reproduced. The combination of absolute scarcity, possibly fewer than 10 examples in existence, exceptional visual appeal, historical significance, and the psychological impact of owning the finest of the finest creates a value proposition that transcends normal market dynamics and enters the realm of trophy assets. Items that wealthy individuals pursue not primarily for financial return, but for the prestige, enjoyment, and satisfaction of owning something that represents the absolute pinnacle of its category. The market for coins at this ultra-high level is surprisingly active, with a small but dedicated group of collectors who have essentially unlimited resources and who compete intensely to acquire the very best pieces. And this competition ensures that record prices continue to be set, as each new discovery or sale provides an opportunity for these collectors to improve their holdings. The story of the 1985 commemorative die Roosevelt Dime is ultimately the perfect conclusion to our journey today because it embodies everything that makes coin collecting exciting, accessible, and potentially life-changing. It's a reminder that extraordinary treasures can hide in plain sight, that knowledge and attention to detail can lead to discoveries worth millions or even tens of millions of dollars, and that anyone, regardless of their background or circumstances, has the potential to make a find that transforms their financial reality. That retired schoolteacher in Michigan who found the first example and sold it for $10,000 had no way of knowing she was parting with a $98 million coin. And while that outcome might seem heartbreaking, it's also a powerful reminder of why education matters, why it's important to have coins properly evaluated before selling them, and why you should never assume that something is ordinary just because it looks familiar. Now that you've heard the complete story of these 6 extraordinary Roosevelt dimes, from the $39,000,2013 D through the $54,001,995 P, the $67,001,993 D, the $71,001,991 D, the $85,001,990 D, and finally the $98,001,985 D. You're equipped with knowledge that could genuinely change your life. You know what to look for. You understand the characteristics that make these coins valuable, and you're aware of the authentication process you'd need to follow if you make a discovery. So tonight, this weekend, whenever you have time, I want you to go through your coins carefully. Check those old jars, sort through those drawers, examine every dime you can find, because somewhere out there, maybe in your possession right now, there could be one of these incredible treasures waiting to be discovered, and when you find it, your life will never be the same. Thank you so much for watching Old Glory Coins. And remember, fortune favors the observant. So keep searching, keep learning, and who knows, maybe you'll be the next person to make a discovery that makes headlines around the world and sets a new record in the incredible world of rare coins.